Headlines have announced his death.
What they do is that they kind of group all religion together. Religion is just all one big thing that the skeptical world is now trying to attack.
Evidence that God is alive and kicking on today's 700 Club Interactive. On 700 Club Interactive, we use technology to pray for each other and explore topics that matter to you. Watch what God is doing in the world today. Well, welcome to the program. Throughout history, philosophers and theologians have wrestled to find God. And Marx and Nietzsche all came along and they declared that God was dead. However, not everyone agrees with these thinkers, and in fact, they say that God is very much alive.
We live in an age where we seem to have it all. Our phones are getting smarter, our cars are getting greener, people are living longer. And if you're bored, there's an app for that. In the midst of this wealth of knowledge and material goods, we have more questions than ever. Why are we here? Where are we going? And what's the point? For Rice Broocks, there are real answers in these uncertain times. He says that it all begins and ends with God.
Well, please welcome Rice Broocks to 700 Club Interactive. Rice, great to have you here.
Good to see you, Gordon.
Why this back and forth? And it seems that it's accelerating now, but it's actually nothing new. Even the Bible says, the fool says in his heart, there is no God. So there were atheists even back then. Why so much now?
After 9/11, that was probably a watershed moment, not only for our country, but in the skeptical world. And many of them, in their own stories, say that 9/11 was the time that Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, and others decided to start writing about religion in general. And so what they do is that they kind of group all religion together in one big, horrible, monstrous picture, kind of a straw man, if you will, philosophically, and attack that. Yeah, and so it's kind of sad. They don't seem to know the difference between a suicide bomber and a Sunday school teacher. But religion is just all one big thing that the skeptical world is now trying to attack.
Well, but they're also trying to attack Christianity. Before it became evident that Muslims were behind the Boston bombing, they were actively saying, you know, it's some right-wing zealot that's responsible, and it was almost anticipation, like they hoped it would be that.
Yeah. When after 9/11, I went to New York City, and I was sitting in one of my favorite restaurants, Carnegie Deli. A little shout out to them. And there was two CBS executives, and the owner of the deli said, "Come over here." He said, "They're getting anthrax letters, and they need answers." So I'm sitting down with these CBS executives, and we were flying every Sunday night to New York for a year to plant a church a month after 9/11. And so when I sat there, I looked at these two CBS executives, and I said, if there's anything 9/11 showed us, is that all religions are not the same. I said, the God that told those men to get in planes and come here and kill people is not the same God that told us to come here in planes and help people. And so really, with terrorism and with people kind of acting out the logical extension of their belief systems, whether it be Islam, and not that all Islam is that way, but the radical element, but let's just say skepticism. Whoever acts out, and when you see a philosophy acted out to its logical conclusion, then you're able to really see the fruit of it. And I think when you get back to skepticism, the fruit of atheism, when they say, well, religion has been the source of bad, well, let's look at what happens when you get rid of religion.
When there is no God.
When John Lennon sung Imagine There's No Heaven, Vladimir Lenin actually built a world like that. And more people died in the 20th century than all the religious wars and stuff that they try to claim as their reason for not believing. That look at what religion did.
It's sort of the unintended consequence, if you will, of atheism. Once you take God out of the picture, then sort of what's the point? What is the value to life?
Yeah, and I mean, and it goes down the line, because when you're talking about evidence for God, so can you have morals without God? Well, Dostoevsky said, the Russian writer said, if there is no God, then all things are permissible. Because if there is no ultimate moral authority, then it's back to the schoolyard says who. People say, well, look at this conflict in Northern Ireland, and that's religious conflict. Well, look at North Korea. You know, you're talking about here's a country that is an atheistic country by definition, and now poses potentially our greatest threat. Because because that shows you that science without some moral bearing is just as good as the scientist or the politician that's wielding that tool.
Well, why have Christians sort of abandoned the playing field, if you will? It's like if you ask them, why do you believe, you tend not to get reasoned argument coming back.
Well, I think, ironically, if maybe that's not the word, the atheist has had to kind of work pretty hard, because in a majority culture in America where people just assume God's existence, and I'm a Christian because I was raised in church or whatever, you don't really ever have to defend that. And so if you're a skeptic, you've had to work pretty hard to say why you don't believe. And Christians have not done their homework. It says, Peter said, to be able to give a reason for the hope that's within you. And so William Wilberforce, I quote him in the book, the British reformer, said, Christianity has been marginalized because those who profess the faith can't answer the questions, even though our arguments are better than the skeptic's arguments. So it's not that our arguments are deficient. And I think that's the fear, that somehow if we get into an intellectual forum, our arguments disappear. And it's just the opposite. When you get to the scientific evidence, the philosophical evidence, and biological evidence, like where did life come from? Is there evidence for a designer within just the smallest living cell? Absolutely. And ultimately, Christ manifests himself. God, the Creator, becomes a man and submits himself, I like to call it, to the ultimate science experiment. He allowed himself to be handled, questioned, and then undeniably historically dies, and then is raised from the dead, verifying who he is.
Why do Christians even fail on that one, though? I mean, when you ask the question, is there an historical Jesus? And what evidence do we have for the history that Jesus Christ lived in Israel, in the first century? A lot of Christians don't even know that.
I mean, a simple one-week tour to Israel will cure your skepticism.
That's true.
I mean, I said this in a little piece I did in the news this week, that little op-ed deal that's saying that if you believe that somehow the Bible is a book of fairy tales, just a 5-day trip to Israel, you've been there many times, you talk to any secular or religious Jewish person, they know that Moses and Jesus were real people. Now, the issue is what happened after Jesus' death.
Right.
Probably the best, one of the great gifts, I wouldn't call it a gift, but Bart Ehrman, he's written more against the Bible. He's a UNC professor, New York Times bestseller, but he actually helped us because he just recently published a book basically saying Jesus lived. And if you don't believe that, then you're not looking at the evidence through the dispassionate eye of the historian, but you have another agenda that denial serves. So here is probably the greatest critic of the Christian faith, the biblical faith, admitting that if you're an historian and you really are interested in history, Jesus lived. So he was, remember C.S. Lewis doing Lord? He was either Lord, liar, or lunatic. Right. I like to say the man, myth, Messiah. Number one, Jesus was a man. Number two, the Bill Maher's of the world that say that that the story of Jesus was a retelling of ancient Egyptian or Persian myths. In the movie Religious and others, they try to tell that, and that's really the myth. No original sources. That's the equivalent of, the National Enquirer, Bigfoot stole my baby. That's it's a drive-by shooting intellectually. But so he was not a mythological remake, and he was the Messiah. And how do we know? Not only did he claim that, not only did his actions and words speak of that, but his death and resurrection verified it.
And we have more evidence of that than we do in terms of manuscripts, in terms of eyewitness accounts that have survived.
No, it's just
in terms of even Roman records, than we do for the existence of Socrates.
If you took my friend Dan Wallace, who's debated Bart Ehrman, says it this way. He says, if you take all the records of ancient historians, you'd pile them up, it'd be about 4 feet high in terms of their manuscripts. If you take the 5,700 Greek manuscripts, the 10,000 Latin manuscripts, the Syriac, the Ethiopic, the Old Church Slovakian, which I think there's only 2 scholars in the world that even know that and can read it, and then the 1 million quotations from the church fathers. If we lost all the manuscripts, we could recreate the New Testament just from the church fathers, but eliminate those quotations, just the historical records in our manuscripts, it would be a mile high. So 4 feet, and so if we're going to deny that the historical accuracy of the Bible, then we throw out everything we know about ancient history. We don't know anything about Rome, we don't know anything about the ancient world. But we just have to be fair in the evidence.
God's Not Dead, Evidence for God in an Age of Uncertainty. The book is available in bookstores nationwide, so I encourage you to get a copy of it. We need now more than ever to be able to defend the faith and to give reasoned arguments for why we believe. Rice, thanks for the book.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for being here. All right, well, coming up, he was a witch doctor and she was a fervent Christian. Find out how they became a match made in heaven right after this.
In 2008, my husband Gary departed for heaven. I was still grieving. And then to find out I had cancer, I began praying, God, how do I do this? Where do I do this? Cancer Treatment Centers of America was the place. Dr. Neelam outlined a plan that would take care of my mind and my body, and she prayed with me.
For Bible-believing Christians, we're able to pray with them in a much deeper way as they begin to really rely upon their faith.
At Cancer Treatment Centers of America, we believe in the power of faith and prayer as indispensable allies in the fight against complex and advanced stage cancer.
I'm back in Telluride on the mountain skiing. I feel strong and healthy.
Advanced medicine and technology.
And I am a survivor.
The warm embrace of the Spirit and the power of prayer.
These are happy tears.
Please go to cancercenter.com/faith. Appointments available now. Cancer Treatment Centers of America. Care that never quits.
If you're the mother of a child with behavior problems, I'd like to talk to you. My name is Janet Lehman, and I'm a behavioral therapist and a mom. I know what it's like when the child that you love becomes a defiant, out-of-control child who disrespects you. That's why my husband James and I created the Total Transformation, the program that tens of thousands of moms are now using to turn around their child's behavior. If you've heard about the Total Transformation and wondered if it will work for you, now you can try it for free. I'm willing to give away 1,000 programs today for free. All you need to do is get the program and let us know how it works for you. We'll let you keep it for free. I know the Total Transformation works because I used these techniques with my own son and with troubled kids for over 30 years. Let me prove to you that it works by giving you the program free.
Call the number on your screen now to get the Total Transformation free.
Andrew was a witch doctor in Nigeria, and his wife was a Christian. Their marriage seemed destined for failure until they turned on the television and saw a familiar face.
Andrew is grateful for many things in his life: his wife, children, grandchildren, and the farm they run together.
I love my life. I have a wonderful family, and I have peace.
But not long ago, Andrew's life was very different. As a young man, Andrew had joined a cult, led by a man named John Alikpo.
He was the grandmaster of the cult, and he ordained me as an agent of the devil. I practiced black magic and cast spells on people.
Andrew's wife was a Christian. She spent 12 years praying for her husband's salvation. He finally got tired of her prayers and kicked her out of the house.
Her prayers stood in the way of my idol worship.
But Andrew says he still loved his wife and visited her. One day while he was at her home, he turned on the television and saw his former cult leader, John Alikpo. Alikpo had seen the 700 Club and given his life to Christ. Now his story was airing on the 700 Club. Andrew knew God was calling him to make the same decision.
As I prayed, I felt like being bathed in cold water. All the anger left me. I experienced peace and joy.
Andrew gave up black magic and the occult and asked for his wife to forgive him.
My prayers were answered. My husband had become a Christian, and now we experience peace and love as a family.
Because of CBN, many people like me have accepted Jesus Christ. God bless you.
God bless you. If you're a member of the 700 Club, you're part of that wonderful story. If you're not a member, join with us. Join in everything we're doing around the world. If you want to see the gospel preached around the world, join the 700 Club, because a portion of every gift goes into the work of CBN International to take the gospel to every nation. So if you want to be a part of it, call us, 888-777-1999. Just say, I want to join the 700 Club. How much is that? Well, it's just $20 a month, 65 cents a day. When you call, ask for Pledge Express. That's electronic monthly giving. The bank does all the work. There are no checks to write, nothing to mail in. We save so much on the processing we can send as our gift to you. Power for Life, monthly teaching CDs. So if you'd like those, ask for Pledge Express when you call. Well, up next, he wore a badge to break the law.
Bribe someone Monday, you had sex with someone unwarranted Tuesday, you were transporting drugs Wednesday, you were protecting drug addicts Thursday. Well, even Internal Affairs has to make a move.
Watch what happened after this cop was busted. Up next.
He was trained since youth for one purpose.
From my childhood, my mom said, one day you'll be a martyr, my son. You will die for the sake of Allah and you will exalt Islam. I considered myself as a sword of Islam. I'm coming to a country and a culture to change it.
Until the people he meant to change changed him.
These Christians and Jews, they don't want to kill us. They're not the same thing that I learned about them.
On the 700 Club, next.
In 2008, my husband Gary departed for heaven. I was still grieving. And then to find out I had cancer, I began praying, God, how do I do this? Where do I do this? Cancer Treatment Centers of America was the place. Dr. Neelam outlined a plan that would take care of my mind and my body, and she prayed with me.
For Bible-believing Christians, we're able to pray with them in a much deeper way as they begin to really rely upon their faith.
At Cancer Treatment Centers of America, we believe in the power of faith and prayer as indispensable allies in the fight against complex and advanced stage cancer.
I'm back in Telluride on the mountain skiing. I feel strong and healthy.
Advanced medicine and technology.
And I am a survivor.
The warm embrace of the Spirit and the power of prayer.
These are happy tears.
Please go to cancercenter.com/faith. Appointments available now. Cancer Treatment Centers of America. Care that never quits.
CBN TV on CBN.com. All the video you love in one easy-to-use location.
Robert Davis was one of America's longest-running fugitives. For 22 years, he ran from the FBI, the U.S. Marshals, and most of all, from God.
Robert Leon Davis was a crooked cop.
Just about every crime you could name, we did. And all the while, we're wearing a badge. Because someone with a badge has a lot of power.
He grew up a hard-headed child in the care of his Christian grandmother. She used Bible stories to teach him right from wrong.
She said, one day you will remember, when I'm gone, you will remember the things I'm telling you now.
He joined the New Orleans Police Department with good intentions and outstanding ability.
I went on with with good hopes and trying to, as much as one man can, change the world. That was one of the few places that espoused honor. And I went on the force with the intentions of being honorable.
But his ideas about changing the world were challenged his first day on the job.
The senior officer I'm riding with, 17 years of experience, just started stopping guys for no reason. Started searching guys for no reason. Started stopping vehicles for no reason. I mean, he was just doing crazy stuff. He was doing everything that the academy said don't do.
He filed a complaint with supervisors, but they convinced him to think twice before blowing the whistle on another officer.
So at that very moment, I realized what I was getting involved in. I realized that this particular force I was on was corrupt, but I realized that I had two choices to make. Either I get out of this, or either I join the club. And unfortunately, I joined the club. Everything Grandma told me is out the door now. Corruption is deep within me. I think at the rate I was going, I could have wound up killing somebody.
Robert and his partners administered their own form of street justice.
Bribe someone Monday, you had sex with someone unwarranted Tuesday, you were transporting drugs Wednesday, you were protecting drug addicts Thursday. Well, even Internal Affairs has to make a move.
Complaints against him piled up. Internal Affairs set up surveillance and caught Robert breaking the laws he was sworn to protect.
I was looking at 30 years in Angola, and I had already placed 27 people in the same prison. And the word had came down that once I was found guilty, that they would rape me and that they would kill me. So I knew that I was going to be dead within 24 hours of being placed in Angola.
He decided to run away before he came to trial. While out on bail, he studied survival techniques and learned how to live in the wilderness. He made his way into Canada and lived as a fugitive.
I can just run and stay in the woods and nobody would ever find me. So I made that decision. But sometime I would come out maybe to earn some money, $20, $30, get some canned goods and go back into the woods. I mean, it was the only place I really absolutely felt safe at.
For 22 years, he crossed the U.S. and Canadian borders, using different names in different cities. He lived with the knowledge that he could be caught at any moment, and he blamed God for his circumstances.
How could there be a God? This God thing is, it's a charade. I mean, it can't be true. And please, I mean, don't mention Jesus Christ. I really didn't, I had an affinity for disliking him, you know, because I was like, this guy is, it's a farce. I became an atheist, you know, a hardcore atheist.
After years of living on the run, his mind was a mess of emotions and regret. Robert thought of killing himself.
For a stretch of 2 or 3 days, I was going between suicide and all kinds of feelings. It's just so many things started coming up. And I believe that at that point, I just wanted to end it all. And I was prepared to end it all. I mean, I had a pistol with me and I thought about it.
Yet passages from the Bible his grandmother taught him came to mind. Robert decided to test God, and God answered.
I kept testing him with many, many things. There was an old coffee can sitting out there, and I took a rock and I placed it on top of an upside down can. And I said, when I wake up in the morning, if that rock is underneath that can, then I believe you exist and I will turn myself in. And when I woke up, the rock was not on the can. I never had the courage to look at that can. When you really think you're dealing with the living God in person in the middle of the woods of Tennessee, that's a very, very scary feeling. And I instantly lost all atheistic viewpoints. Instantly just lost it and reached back out to where I was before with my grandmother. You know, visions of my grandmother and visions of Bible passages began to come back in my head. And I, that very next day, surrendered to law enforcement. But I had first surrendered to God.
He went back to New Orleans a new man, ready to face the charges against him.
I could not fathom a God that was telling me to surrender only to be surrendering to debt. It had to be surrendering to life. I did not know that the judge was going to release me. I actually thought I would get the 30 years. She felt that I had served time and that she was going to take a chance on me. She told me that. I'm going to take a chance on you.
Robert is a free man. He tells his story to police academy recruits and works to bring rogue cops to justice.
I feel that my very reason for coming back out of the woods is to help people, at least assist one cop to not do what I did, and that it will cause a common citizen to report a cop that's bad.
As he looks back on his 22 years on the run from God and the law, he now knows that he was never alone.
God was there for me, and he's there for me now. I forgot God, and I hated him, but God didn't forget me. And as much as I hated him, he loved me.
And he loves you too. Even if you said things against him, even if you said, I can never believe in him, even if you did all of that, he still loves you. And he's still reaching out for you. You know, the Bible says, can I forget you? You're my child. See, I've written in you in the palm of my hand. You know, that's why God answered Robert's prayer, because he loved him. If, you know, Robert said, okay, put this rock on top of this can, and if in the morning it's in the can, then I'll turn my life around. You can test him. The Bible says, taste and see that the Lord is good. Now, I don't mean test from a standpoint of, you know, just like the Israelites, can you make a banquet in the middle of the desert, and in your test you're actually expressing your unbelief. But if you pray with all of your heart, Jesus, are you there? Are you real? can you really change me? Can you really turn my life around? Can you make me new again? And if you pray that with all of your heart, He'll answer you. You know, don't play games with God. But if you really mean it, and it's coming from your heart, the Bible says, when you seek me with all of your heart, then you'll find me. So don't leave anything back. If you're wondering, if you're skeptical, God wants to show up for you. He wants to speak to you. And it's the wonderful thing that He can actually open the eyes of your understanding to show you the greatness of His power towards us who believe. Now, does He promise us a life where everything's wonderful? No. Jesus actually promises the other. And He says, in this life, you'll have trouble. You'll have persecution. It's not going to be all wonderful. But then He says, but be of good cheer, for I have overcome the world, and He's made a way for us to be with Him for all eternity. That is worth living for. Now, if you want someone to help you with this prayer and to tell you more about Christianity, what it means to be a Christian, what do Christians really believe, call us. Number's toll free, 888-777-1999. When you call, I've got something free I want you to have. It's all free. The phone call's free. The packet's free. It's called A New Day. And there's a teaching on what are the fundamentals of the Christian faith. You know, what do Christians really believe? What's laid out in the Bible for us to believe? And then how do you live the Christian life? What is this? We're here for you. Phone call's free. Packet's free. If you want it, call us. 888-777-1999. Well, this is 700 Club Interactive, where we interact with you, and we've got some inbox questions. Anita Murray writes in, can a good person who doesn't believe in God still go to heaven? There's a theological answer here. The very practical one is the cutoff, if you will, for getting to heaven or not is, does Jesus know you? And He says that clearly, where people come to Him and say, well, I've done great miracles in your name, I've all these things. And He says, get away from me, I never knew you. And so that's the test. Do you know? So it's going to be real hard for a good person who doesn't know Jesus. At the same time, theologians have based on some of the writings of Paul, we're held accountable to what we know. So if you're a person you've never heard the good news, you've never heard the gospel, or you're a child and there's no comprehension, you know, you're going to be okay. So there's a theological answer, but the very practical one is know Jesus and know Him in your heart. When you do that, you have the assurance you're going to heaven. Let's go to Joseph in the chat room.
Well, we have Eric. He says, if I sincerely believe in Buddha and have peace in my life, why should I believe in Jesus?
You should get The Quest for God. It's a DVD I put out dealing with Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, and how difficult it is under those religious systems to really find God. And the Buddhist one, I would say, is probably the most difficult one. Now, can you do meditative techniques that Buddhism teaches you and have peace for a moment? Yeah. But will you have the assurance that you'll have it for eternity? Buddhism says, as the first noble truth, all existence is suffering. You know, do you really believe that? Do you really want to reach nirvana, which means a snuffing out, a blowing out of your personality? And how hard is it to achieve that? Christianity is Jesus coming and saying, I'll take care of all that for you. I'll offer myself as the perfect sacrifice so that you can spend eternity with me in heaven. Examine the claims of Buddhism and then examine the claims of Christianity, and you'll discover Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. We'll leave you this word from Psalms 8. What is man that you're mindful of him, and the Son of Man that you visit him? For you have made him a little lower than the angels, and you have crowned him with glory and honor.